Hello YouTube. I made a video quite a while back explaining why I hand chop so much wood, and the whole point of it was to explain my lifestyle, help people understand why I don't use automated wood splitters, but also a little bit more of an insight into why I live the way that I choose to live. I know most people are familiar with me because of TikTok, but YouTube gets a little bit more insight into the behind the scenes of my life. So that's what we're going to do today, is we're going to talk about my lifestyle and why I think more people could actually benefit from some of the, I don't want to make it too culty, but could benefit from some of the principles that I live by. So let's get into it. So first and foremost, this is going to be just an explanation video and a peek inside the way that I live. I want to kind of apologize to everybody for this black eye I'm dealing with right now. That might be a story for a different day. It was a long weekend. But today we're going to be talking about, instead, we're going to be talking about sort of a peek into the reason why I even started, why I've been living like this my whole life, but even why I started sharing living like this and why I think more people would benefit from it, to be totally honest with you. So we're going to jump right into it. I think the most important thing we should go over today first is the whole reason why I split wood by hand still. There are faster ways to do it. You can do it with a wood splitter, which is like an automated hydraulic powered machine, or gas powered, but it's hydraulic wood splitter. You can do it by just buying your wood if you have, the means to do so. I don't. I still do things by hand. I use a chainsaw to fell the trees down, and then an axe to split up all the wood. And then I donate the excess wood that I don't need to heat my home. I'll donate the excess to people who are in need of it. Now, I could donate a lot more if I just used a hydraulic splitter, but one, I can make money by making videos and fun to watch videos still doing the craft by hand. Two, it'll keep me just upright and moving. I think a lot of people are under the false understanding that machines are making our longevity a lot better as humans. That's not the case. A lot of disease and atrophy of the lower back is something that takes place when you stop doing shit. So yeah, I think doing things by hand as long as you can keeps us alive, keeps us healthy, keeps us happy. As long as you're at least a little bit careful and aware of just not getting into overuse injuries. So just being hyper aware of that, not killing yourself, but doing shit by hand is not horrible for us. And as our lifestyles get lazier and lazier, our lifestyles are not getting better and happier. So that's going to lead into the major part that I'm going to talk about today, which is the principles that I am living my life by and have kind of always lived my life by, and why I think it's more important now than ever to kind of stamp a lot of them down so people can see sort of that blueprint and maybe start applying some of these principles to their own lives as it gets more important. So I'm going to break this down into like a 1 through 5 principles to live by kind of list. But before we get into like, the rules or the, tenements or whatever you want to call them, first I'll just talk about the most kind of glaringly necessary thing to talk about, and that's why I split wood by hand. You can obviously, and I can afford one, you can definitely buy a wood splitter, which is powered by gas, and then you are able to automatically split the wood. Make my life a lot easier, obviously, but would it really? Because the real question is if we take away all the things we do by hand in this world and automate every single thing, it doesn't necessarily mean our life is going to get better. So I think doing some things by hand still, you can choose them. It does not need to be as excessive as splitting wood, but you find those little chores in your life that you don't want to automate, and it'll make your life a little bit more meaningful, I think, and at least keep you upright, moving, walking, active, and a part of your own existence. That's kind of important. So with that, I'm gonna lead into, let's do a 1 through 5 list, and I'll just knock these out and you guys can kind of see a little bit more of the deliberate approach that I put into living the way that I live. So number 1, I think, is exercise. Now that's obvious, everybody knows you need to exercise. I think everybody should move every single day. There should not be any days, unless you have the flu or something, there should be no days where you do not exercise. Structure some time. You need to exercise every single day. It's an aggressive principle, but you do not need to approach it aggressively. You can do yoga one day. Another day it could be a 3-mile but a walk. But you need to move. You got to move every single day. Your brain chemistry just is not the same without it, and it needs to be religious. It needs to be an everyday event, because with the way people are living now in this like sort of Western lifestyle, it's just not that common, and people need to get exercise. And instead of maybe looking at it from the standpoint of like how I do it, which is weight training, some yoga, some hiking, it doesn't need to be that extreme, right? If you want it to be that, you can, but just make sure that every single day you're doing some form of exercise for your mental health. It could be walking, yoga, swimming, Pilates, bike rides, rock climbing. It does not, slacklining, I don't care what it is. It does not have to be, you know, the traditional bodybuilding or shaping your body. It doesn't need to be that specific, but you do need to exercise every single day. Don't expect your life to feel organized, manageable without the exercise. So that's number one for sure. Now that is the least esoteric concept. That's the one that's the least fluffy sounding. That's why I led with it, because it gets a little culty as I go on, but you'll understand why I find these things so important. So number 2 on my list is food, and it is making sure you are making and preparing at least 80% of your food yourself. There are meal prep services now. People complain that they're too busy, so they need a meal prep service to help them out, or they need to eat out and order their food while they're on the go because they're parents or what. I don't care what it is. If you're not telling yourself, your body, your existence, you're not letting that communication between your brain and your life take place where you are saying, my nourishment is more important than anything else in this world. Why would I not take the time to prepare my own food? Then you're letting that downstream effect happen with everything else, because then what is important enough? What does constitute something that's important enough to take your time on? And if you're not making your own food for your family, if you're not preparing things from home, then you start telling yourself that your nourishment comes lower down on the list than everything else in the day. And I'm sorry, there will never be something from your work life. There will never be something from your entertainment life. There will never be something from your social life that needs to take precedent over preparing your own food. Because once you get into the routine of saying, now I want to prepare my own food at least 80% of the time. Think about it. If you eat 5 meals a day, we're talking about one of those meals each day not being prepared from home. So the number 80% isn't even that unrealistic. Me personally, my number is probably upwards of 95, 98%, maybe more of my meals and food are prepared at home. Obviously I buy like beef jerky. I wouldn't consider one of those things if I pick up some beef jerky or something on the road. I'm just talking about like genuine significant meals. No meal prep services, no fucking way. I'm not doing that stuff, because you need to get into that routine in life. And it's easy for me to say because of where I live, but then is it? Because then I don't even have the option. I have to do it. So yeah, I think that sending that message to yourself that, you know what, it's not even about abs. It's not even about body fat. It's not even about looking good in a bikini. It's about literally sending that message to yourself that my nourishment is being a part of that process is far more important than anything else in my day. And until you start sending that message to yourself, you're not going to believe it. So that is why I think that slowing things down and being a part of that process is crazy important. Number 3 rules to live by that I believe in wholeheartedly is news. Yes, I am in a position in my life where I don't need to consume news all the time. Now I do understand that is from a position of privilege, but I've also kind of manipulated that into my life and kind of imposed it. Now, let me explain what I mean. I think everybody should only consume news 1 time a day. It keeps you relevant, keeps you involved, keeps you understanding, like, hey, if there's anything very pressing right now that I need to know about, then I'm going to make sure I know about it, and then I'm going to move on with my day and not continuously try to consume other problems in the world before you've processed and dealt with your own. And that's what it's getting to now, is because all of these social media outlets, people are just consuming news all the time. TikTok used to be all about just jokes and watching people dance in front of a screen and then cooking and fun recipes and this and that and this and that, but then it became like CNN is now on TikTok and Fox News is now on TikTok, and all these slimy fucking corporations are getting their, you know, their tentacles into our lives every way they can, and they're getting there faster now. So it used to be you check the news on a newspaper. That's not in my lifetime, but in a good time to live, you would just check the news on a newspaper. That was the news for the day. Even if you wanted more news, you'd have to wait till the next day. But now these fucking news channels and these news outlets are finding ways to get to you before you decide to get to them. And that's where it becomes very consuming. That's where it starts getting to a point where the outside world is manipulating your emotions. Now, I'm not saying there aren't important things to learn about in this world. I'm just saying at what cost. Once a day seems reasonable, and unless you are a stockbroker, which if you are, you can count, you don't need to count stocks as a part of your news consumption, but just general everyday news consumption with this fear mongering and all that, it needs to be limited now. And as adults, as humans, we need to take the reins back and go, okay, on all of my apps, I'm blocking news and I'm only consuming news in this one objective resource. So you pick one resource, I don't care what it is. It can be newspaper for you. It can be the TV channel you enjoy the most for news. It can be a more objective source that you go to. I think there's Substack and there's other, you know, sites that you can consume news on. You pick yours. I don't care what it is. I'm not even telling you left, right. I'm not telling you what part of news to consume. I'm just telling you, pick one, consume it once a day, and move on with your life, and that's enough. Don't allow yourself to accidentally consume news anymore. If you gotta be learning about events that are taking place in the world a couple hours later than everybody else, fucking fine. To be honest with you, we don't have the emotional and mental bandwidth to absorb and deal with everybody else's problems, and if you continue to try to do that all the time throughout your day, you're gonna find yourself in these weird pockets and positions where you can't surmount your own issues, and then anxiety creeps in, then depression creeps in. So yeah, you should care about your community, you should give a shit about the world, but you should draw a line in the sand and decide this is what I'm gonna consume and this is where I'm gonna get it, and I'm not gonna let news decide when it comes to me. I'm gonna decide when I consume it. So taking control over that is huge. Number 4 on my list, and sorry I don't have any of this written down, but I know there's 5 big ones that I live by. Number 4, oh, that's right. So number 4 on my list is a hobby. You need to pick a hobby where you're still creating something by hand. I obviously split wood, that's not really mine. Mine would be like other ventures, butchering, hunting, woodworking, lots of stuff like that. But for you, it needs to be one. Most people in this world can't even say they make anything by hand anymore. You need to pick one. Maybe you do some bread making on the side. Maybe you do pottery. Maybe you're painting 2 canvases just randomly a week. Just get that 30 minutes in. Whatever it is, you need to be doing something by hand that is sole purpose is just hand creation. You're never going to be better than AI. AI's already surpassed us. We're never going to be better at machining things than factories are. It's just not true. It's not the case. You know, we're just never going to be better. But the truth is that there is an increasing need and want now because of this encroaching technology that's coming in. There's an increasing need and want for things to be handmade, for people to be artisans, for people to have skills, and people are being more and more drawn to that type of the world because there's less and less of people that do that. So you need to pick up one. It does not need to stay the same for the rest of your life. If you want to dabble, if you want to jump from here to here, I don't give a shit how you do it, but you need to be doing that. And the sooner, the better. Jump on something today. You do not need to be good at it. And my world is, of course, this wood splitting that I'm always sharing on YouTube and TikTok and everything. It's woodworking, but there's a lot of stuff I do all the time still by hand, just because I think that there is not an increase in value to things just because they get better in quality, but someone isn't touching them, someone isn't working with them, someone isn't the one creating it. And we got to start pushing back a little bit on the system and being more involved with things and starting to make those decisions, which leads me to my very last sort of rules to live by. It's number 5, and definitely the most important, is you're gonna have to start drawing your boundaries for technology. Technology is not bad. I'm not trying to, you know, cast this weird, like, you know, Unabomber shadow over technology, because it is going to lead to, it's already doing it, but leading to curing cancer. It's going to lead to, you know, a lot of disease prevention, and it's going to lead to faster travel and great stuff. But it's also going to lead to a decrease in the quality of our lives if we don't start making some decisions now. Now, it used to be technology would come in, it would take a while for its shock waves to change the world around it, and then, you know, we'd feel it, we'd adapt, but the adaptation is now happening too slow to keep, human adaptation is now happening too slow to keep up with the technological advances. So now we're just sort of at the whim of whoever makes the next invention, and it might change everything. So a good example of that is that or a good example of implementing this rule is that I don't do FaceTime. I don't think everyone needs to apply that rule at all. In fact, I think FaceTime is wonderful for a lot of people. But there's a couple problems for me with FaceTime. As soon as you answer that FaceTime call, it's like that person got dropped into the room with everybody around you. And then you're now trying to get that person caught up onto your day. You're trying to catch up onto their day. It stalls. It sort of skips like a CD. Your day sort of skips like a CD, and then you kind of are having to revisit a lot of things and then get caught. So it just has this disruption to it. It has like an interruption to it. And I feel like people feel like they have to answer. And I also feel like FaceTime has now started creating this really strange space where people maybe are deciding to go see each other less because they think they are closer with somebody than they really are, because they're spending time on the internet with that person, or time over the phone with that person rather. So they kind of feel like they got their fix. They don't need to go see that person today. They can wait a little bit longer. And I think that that's not great. I do believe that there's value in missing somebody. And if you don't live close enough to somebody and you miss them, you should consider moving, or they should consider moving. And you should just have these good relationships with people. And that's just my opinion and how I apply FaceTime. But here's the thing, that doesn't work for everybody. Some kid who goes to college and wants to talk with their mom face to face over the phone, they should use FaceTime, and then they should decide what world they're going to start drawing lines and, you know, these boundaries in to avoid overdoing it with technology. So you figure out your boundaries, you figure out where you think it's too far, you figure out what parts of it you want to use. But now we need to start flipping the script and acting as autonomous humans in making these decisions, because now technology is being imposed on us and we no longer have our hands sort of creating the technology. It's sort of just snowball that's rolling down a hill, and it's just happening. So for me, I'll figure out, it's social media I'm cool with. I'm still cool with social media. Virtual reality, I'm not cool with. It's not something that I'll embrace. So it's just figuring out for you where your lines are, and now being a human, and instead of just embracing every bit of technology that comes along with open arms, it's time to go, okay, I acknowledge that that exists. Do I want to implement that into my life? And starting to make those calls yourself. So yeah, it's time to sort of have a step back, a little bit of a renaissance as a community, as a society. It's time to start making some of those decisions and deciding where we want to start choosing the progress, instead of letting the progress just be pursued for the sake of the next thing. So there you go. Those are the 5 things I think more people could apply to their everyday existence that would increase their quality of living. I do not have a name for it yet. I would just call it logic. But it's crazy how many of these principles are not applied every day and should be applied every single day. And I think if you really make a cognitive effort, you really make that moment in your life happen where you go, okay, that is how I'm going to start living. We'll see that we can live alongside technology in a much more friendly, sort of embracing way, where it's like, yo, this is cool, I like it, I'm not going to put it in my life, I'm not going to let it change, you know, the slow kind of pace that I enjoy on my Sundays or whatever. But I could see why that's a cool thing. I'm just not going to choose it. We need to start doing a little bit more of that, instead of the old lifestyle that we're used to, where it's like, hey, here's email, it exists, we're all using it now. this will be the first generation where there's a full class of people, a full generation of people where we have to make these decisions ourselves. And it'll be the first time where there'll be groups of us who decide what to and not to embrace. And I do want I want to be very clear on this. I'm not calling out for the slowing or stopping of technological progress. I just think it needs to be more directed and focused into areas like medicine, travel, and things that are, you know, more important, or, you know, environmentalism and stuff like that. That's where technology pursuits can be increased, improved upon, energy, stuff like that. But I don't think it needs to be implemented on human existence as much as it has been. So I'm making an effort every single day to put my foot down and decide how much of it I want to consume. So there you go. 5 rules. Hopefully it didn't come across as too culty, too distant, you know, in ideas. It should seem pretty grounded, I think, to the average person. And I hope that helps some of you understand the way I live a little bit more. Have an awesome day, YouTube. I'll be back at you soon with another ridiculous wood splitting video.